The CIOs are a troubled lot. What stumps the CIO community is a simple yet vexing question: how to find the people with specialized skill sets in the areas of emerging technologies. And nobody seems to have an answer. The talent-starved IT services industry hasn't been able to come up with a convincing response either. Meanwhile, IT leaders at the top organizations admit that IT skill gap is one of the top 3 challenges they are grappling with. The demand for industry-ready skills in the areas of data science, cloud, AI, forensics, and security have risen exponentially. But the supply of the corresponding skills is not keeping up with the spiraling market demand. This demand-supply mismatch has resulted in a gap between the business demand for adoption of these technologies and the supply of in-house skills to facilitate it. The IT skill gap is fast snowballing into a full-blown talent crisis, and there is no end in sight. Hello and welcome to ETCIO Leaders Live. I'm Sneha Jha, editor at ETCIO, and your host for the session. We are streaming live to you right now on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and the ETCIO website. And I'm very pleased to welcome our guest today. He is Shiju Rawther, Head IT at SBI Mutual Fund. In a career spanning 2 decades, Shiju has worked for a wide range of enterprises. Prominent among them are TransUnion Sibyl, India Infoline Group, Fullerton India, Care Ratings, Poonawalla Finance, Wipro, and APM Terminals. Over the past 13 years, Shiju has emerged as a key IT leader in the financial services industry, having spearheaded several noteworthy transformational projects for the companies he's worked with. He's also on the technology advisory board for top security OEMs and a few financial institutions in India and abroad. Good afternoon, Shiju. Welcome to ETCIO Leaders Live. So great to have you with us today.
Good afternoon, Sneha. Good afternoon. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Shiju. Shiju, the IT department is the center of action in most enterprises because digital transformation is front and center for all businesses right now. And on the other hand, the technology-savvy LOBs are championing the adoption of emerging technologies. Earlier, new technologies were pushed by the CIOs. Now there is a pull factor that comes into play. Also, the time gap between the emergence of a new technology and the business demand for its implementation is shrinking. This is where the skill deficit becomes glaringly obvious. The supply of skills is not keeping pace with the business demand for it. IT departments are under pressure to deliver these projects faster than before. This leaves them with very little time to work towards skill augmentation. And the CIOs often lament that the IT skill gap has a crippling effect on their innovation plans. So I thought I'd talk to you about some of the ways in which organizations can bridge the skill gap and then go full steam ahead with their innovation agenda. So to begin with, you see, skill gap is an overriding concern that adds risk to every project the IT department and the CIO undertakes. What are the various ways in which skill shortage is impacting your innovation plans, and how is it preventing the IT department from living up to its vision and mission?
Thank you, Sneha. I think it's a very important question, a very good question. First of all, today the technology is not limited only for as a support functions. It's more it's an enabler, business enabler, and definitely its technology has taken a business role as well. So go-to-market strategy is very important when you define for any roadmap or when you plan for any sort of projects which is going to transform the business. So you need to also look upon how fast, how quick, how agile you are able to deliver it to the business. The challenge is not only from the technology perspective. The biggest challenge today, what everyone is facing in the industry, is from the skills perspective. And we have been talking about this since decades now for any of the technologies. So over the period of the last 2 years, it has gone, the vacuum has created a huge vacuum in terms of the skill set shortage, and that has created a huge vacuum in terms of resources. But this was always been there. So how do we bring in more in terms of agile factors? How do we bring in more in terms of the skill sets pool within the organization level itself? So those are the things which we keep embracing in terms of our new innovations part. The good part is that whenever and whichever the organization have discussed about it, everyone has thought of some or other strategies to how to build it up, align with the business in terms of moving towards services based or microservices based sort of solutions, in terms of reducing the dependency on in-house structures of the resource pool. But yes, given the ask, what you had asked in the question, it was very important. How do we align with the business? That's the one thing which technology should do as in within the captive organizations. How do we make sure that business gets all those transformational thrust from the technology solutions on time, so that they can be more compete in the market, they can be more competitive in terms of the business with the other industry peers. Now, for to do that, it's a joint venture which we'll have to always do in terms of business teams as well as with the technology team. So how good the requirements you gather from them, the understanding of the requirement, and how do you convert that requirements into the business processes, into the technology processes and the workflows. That is the one key aspect which technology can bring into the table. Second, how do you bring in terms of more resource pool? So we are also working in terms of making a pool which can be from both the aspect, a blend of insourcing and outsourcing. So that's the one blend which we are also looking up for. Second, how do we bring in more in terms of getting the people around from fresh mindset, the millennial mindsets, and how do we make them trained in terms of to equip to take it up the next level of the transformation what we are into the journey. So definitely there are a lot of roadmaps and the strategies which we are also building it up in terms of covering up the shortage which is happening at this point of time.
Right, right. But in terms of impacting the delivery of projects, in terms of the cost involved in a project or the speed that is required for a project to go live faster, do you think this thing sort of impacts? Do you think the skill deficit impacts these business objectives, these deliverables?
Yes, definitely. We are also seeing those sort of impacts. Not either you look upon from any sort of deliveries, either it could be in-house deliveries or it could be from the outsourced deliveries. But everywhere there is a challenge in terms of the resources, and nevertheless, it has become one of the excuse also for not delivering now, which is I can see it's much more common in the market today. And definitely it has impacted the business with the delays in the timelines, and the COVID has played a major role in terms of that act on to that. Though we have seen a lot of adoption of the technology happen during this period of time, and the most of the organizations which were not even tech savvy, they have been moving towards the tech. And in fact, the number of interactions which I might have done over the last 2 years over these platforms, I don't think so. I would have never be ever done in the last 2 decades. So definitely there are a lot of adoptions which are happening over the technology, and it could not have been possible without the availability of the resources. So there are resources. I'm saying, but the key good skill resources are lesser. The one key reason was that last 2 years batch couldn't get into the campus recruitments as well. That was the one drawback which is there still, and I think that's getting served now because most of the institutions are going back now in terms of getting and hiring from the campus recruitments. But yes, there are delays in terms of the projects which is impacting the business to the go-to-market strategies now.
Correct, correct. Now, like you mentioned, there is a shortage of people who have the in-depth knowledge of the operational aspects of some of these emerging technologies. What are some of the areas where the skill gap is most alarming?
See, I think it's not very particular about a particular field or domain where you are having a shortage of the pool of the resources. So if you see today, the most of the resources in terms of development, whether it's from the analytics, it could be from the infrastructure point of view, or could be from the information security point of view, you will have the skill set resources shortage everywhere, though it was always been there. Because when I talk about the skilled resources, you need to be really skilled. It's not only from the words perspective or from the knowledge perspective, from the book perspective. Someone who has already worked on the solution, that was always been there.
Mhm.
Today when you sit for hiring of candidates, you get to know the person's through with the profile, that he or she might have worked in number of solutions, but when you actually start speaking to them, they would have only have overheard about it. So that was always been there. So that sort of skill sets gaps and deficiencies was always been there. But predominantly now, over the last 2 years, since there was a vacuum in terms of coming out of the freshers of the college and getting placed out in the institutions, that vacuum has created and given an opportunity for all those who were already available in the systems. So I think that gap has built a big space in terms of the crunch in the resource pool. But it's a matter of time. It's a matter of time where you will see the things will become normal in a couple of days now.
Right, right. Now, Shiju, cyber security, data analytics, AI, and cloud, these are typically some of the areas that promise to be a skill, that promise to be worthy of attention and investment in terms of skill development. So, how is your organization focusing on efforts towards bridging the skill gap in each of these areas?
See, I think the organization perspective, all the organizations are investing a huge amount in terms of learning factors and making the internal resources to be more curved towards a new business requirement. And definitely it has to be aligned to the business needs as well. Say, for example, when I talk about the analytics, now people are moving from basic analytics to data science. When I talk about the data science, the lot of emphasis is being given in terms of people to learn machine learnings, artificial intelligence, building the models on R or Python. So those are the investments which organization is heavily looking into in terms of embracing the capability of their existing pool. The reason one is that they already come up with the business knowledge pool. So it's a good blend of mixture of having business knowledge as well as the technology knowledge in terms of the newer innovations or newer pool of the technologies which is coming up now. So organizations are investing on various platforms, various engaging with various institutions to get them empaneled in terms for the long period of educational tenure, so that candidates or the resources of the employees who are there with them can be embraced with those knowledge.
Okay. Now, what are some of the areas where you are conducting a role-based audit to evaluate the skill gap within your organization? And what have been your findings in terms of the need to upskill and reskill your workforce or even multi-skill?
I think the need for today's hour is to have a person with a multi-skilling. So that's the one of the need, because today if you have a single skill and surviving on that skills for a longer period could be a challenge, because today what we do can be obsolete tomorrow. So you need to be
Correct.
more faster than what the technology comes in the pace today. So till this time, say for example, I'll just give an example for the development. Once upon a time we used to do on C, we moved from C to C++, from C++ we moved to C hash, then Java came in, and we have adopted the Java, then .NET. So that was the trending which one has to kept adoption in terms of embracing themselves from the knowledge perspective. Similarly, the infrastructure people who were there on the data center perspective, they have to move to the cloud. Now cloud has also gone from code as an infrastructure. So you have to keep embracing the knowledge and accommodating the new functionalities as well. So it's an adoption which you'll have to bring in first, and it's more than the organization self. Individual will have to also take it up first, because organization can more and max they can only push you to adopt it. They can facilitate them in terms of getting a platform or getting an institutions or getting some sort of knowledge transfers to them, but adoption and the learning individually have to do. So I would always say the learning cultures or learning cultivation hunger should be always there within one technology, or who are the technology guys or people are there. So that's the one thing which always should be there in one's hub.
Right, that's a very valid point, which emphasizes the fact that even the IT professionals need to keep their skill sets current, and they need to build their skills over the entire arc of their career. It's not just degree based anymore, right?
Exactly.
Right. So, how can organizations on their part leverage the enterprise learning platforms to help employees who are interested in augmenting their skills and who are interested in learning new skills to apply to the organization?
I think most of the corporate now gets tied up with either through the various social media learning platforms which are there. There are a lot of organizations which engage with the institutions in terms of imparting the knowledge as per their functionals or as per their expertise or as per their business requirements. So, but definitely everyone is investing onto that. We are also onto that part wherein we are also investing heavily in terms of the learning, because it's our prerogative that the employee who is being associated with us for a long period of time, they should also see some sort of development, self development within them, whether it could be from the progress in terms of hierarchical way. Apart from that, they should also see their progress in terms of their career perspective as well. So in terms of when we want to say someone has to grow in career, they definitely will have to pick up the new challenges, and the challenges can be only come if they are adopting the new roles, and roles can only come when they have the skill sets for that particular roles. And it's our prerogative to make them also embrace in terms of the new roles and new skills, and grow within the organization over the period of time. So
Right.
a lot of investment in terms of learning, a lot of investment in terms of engaging with the platforms, and the social media platforms have become much more easier to connect to them. So it doesn't require them to travel anywhere. They can do their own courses with their leisure time, and it makes more easier for them to learn, practice, and do hands-on practices also whenever they want to do it onto the platforms. So a lot of investments on that side in terms of upskilling the skills of for the any of the employees.
Right. Now, Shiju, in your previous response, you mentioned that employees need to be multi-skilled. So, when we're talking about this need for multi-skilling, and once the organization on its part does skill gap identification and assessment of the development program, skill development program, then how can the organizations take a systematic, structured approach to bridging the skill gap to better help their employees build these multidisciplinary teams for fostering innovation, because that's the need of the hour in the digital age.
So I think the best to do is that rotation in every 18 months one should do in, because when I speak about the rotation, it doesn't mean the rotation in terms of the 100% operational. But say for example, today I am a person who is developing in terms of language on Java. Tomorrow I should be part of the team who is also developing in terms of Python or R. Now it gives me immense opportunity to learn the another aspect and another part of the development angle wherein the new products is getting developed. So I may do my core job, but I'll take additional responsibilities also out over there. And that's how you will get 360-degree coverage in terms of all what the technology segments are happening in the organization. Second, also it gives a multi application opportunity for any of the employees to look upon how do they reach out to the top position. Say for example, if you want to be a head IT or CIO or CTO, You need to know all the aspects of the technology or all the aspects of the gamut of the field, what's running within that function. Now, if you want to know, you may have to do this rotation, and you may have to look upon all the aspect of the pieces what is running around over there, and collaboratively all those come under the funnel for the head IT, for this CIO or CTO of the organization. So if the aspiration is to become the top, you need to know each and everything. I'm saying you may not need to be master of that, but at least you should know how that functionality works in, and that's how you start developing a multi skill. So it's not only from the technology perspective, from the business acumen perspective as well. So that's the one thing which always technology people miss out of, because technology is always looked upon a deliveries. It's not a deliveries. It's more for business acumenship which should come in. So what you are going to deliver, that should make a difference to the business teams. And how do it comes? It only comes if you know the business. Now, if you know the business, you know what product or what solutions you are going to deliver it to the table to the business, and how actually it's going to make a difference within them in terms of the revenues or in terms of the industry peers. So that's the one thing which anyone will have to see and learn. And that's the best opportunity if you rotate yourself in every
Right.
certain period of time.
Right, that's a very relevant point, Shiju, because it also helps in creating that well-rounded leadership experience before you really reach that top position, and it also helps tease out the business skills from employees who have typically been in the IT department, and gives that think like a business sort of a mindset. That's a very valid point that you raised. Now, I want to come back to this one area which is very critical in terms of skill augmentation, and that's data. Because, and like you also mentioned, data science is a big area, and data driven insights today are representing the transformative potential for most organizations. And there's a lot of focus on employees gaining data fluency, data dexterity, so that they can understand, infer, present, and retrieve data to deal with a lot of business challenges. Now, since data is at the epicenter of where the learning needs to take place, how are you dealing with the skill gap in this area and the upskilling opportunities around this area? What have you done specifically at SBI Mutual Fund?
I think this is a very valid question in terms of how to visualize the data. For technology guys to understand the data, I would always recommend that they should know the business angle first. Why, where the data is being consumed, how we can monetize the data, what we are sitting on top of it. And definitely, data is now being called as a new soil. Till this time, we used to call up as oil, because data is something soil. Why I'm saying, because you can cultivate anywhere, and you cultivate anywhere. It's a brown field, and you can grow anything. So, knowing the data, you need to know the business first, because where that the relevancy of the data comes into, and how can you can monetize, how you can leverage on in terms of data, in terms of growing your next leap of business phase. So unless you know the value of the data, unless you know how to visualize the data, unless you know how to massage the data and bring some sort of analytical and predictive analytics out of that, you will not be able to get the insight. Otherwise, data is garbage for you.
Right.
So the key thing for any of the technology guys to upskill onto that level is to very much to understand the business priorities from that data sets. That's very important, because unless you do, you otherwise you will be only a postman job. What
Mhm.
business asks you, you are just delivering it. How do you become ahead of that? Taking it out of the data, bring it to the business and say, hey, use this data. This can give you relevant sort of revenues. This can give you relevant sort of insights, what is happening in the industry. This can prevent you something from the risk. This can prevent you something from the compliance. This data is the fact. And I'm sure when you go with the data, no questions will be asked for anything. Why? Because you are
Right.
going with the data backed up. So definitely, for knowing what the data top of you are sitting, you need to be to a head curve from your business team to understand what's the use of this data. And since you come up with the power of technology, you also has to massage it. You has to bring it out a meaningful output of interpretation of the data, take it to the business, and then relevantly present them by saying ki this can bring in this sort of business revenues if you use this data sets.
Correct,
So I think
correct.
that's the one thing for any of the data scientists or any of the data team which they want to leverage on the data sets. That's the one thing which they want to do, and that's what we are trying to do over here. So that team we call as a business team,
Mhm.
technology business team. So that's how we refer them, because they are a technology guy, but definitely they are a head of the business guys with technology powered. So
Right.
that's what we
And what
do.
specific steps have you taken to enhance their skills in the field of data sciences so that they can come up with relevant data and, like you said, create business cases around data, create watertight business cases that can then be presented to the executive management.
There are a lot of playbooks which we have created in-house within the team, also in terms of understanding what sort of data sets, how does it interpret to the business, for which function of the business. It's not only for the one function, how the other function, every functions the organization take the advantage of the data sets. That the playbooks which we have created. Also, there are different sort of interpretation models have been created in terms of so that every functions can take, or they can take the leverage from the output of those models. So it's a innovation sort of creativity sort of things which we keep doing it out over here, in terms of making sure that different models have been built, different models have been done in terms of R&Ds, what sort of sentimental analysis, in terms of what sort of predictive analytics it can bring it out onto the table. There are a lot of experiments also been done in terms of NLG and NLP, wherein we can leverage in terms of ready-made research reports as well out of that. So that's also, so it's a complete innovation and disruptions what we try to do, the way in terms of, though the data science team is getting built it up in terms of more matured and curved way, but it's all a disruption. So how do you bring in, so you need to be like a fintech when you work on data. You need to be more disruptive, you need to be more innovative, and that's how you bring something value, different value into the table.
Right, right. Very, very valid and relevant points there, Shiju. Now, you're also on the advisory board of a lot of these cybersecurity companies. So I'm sure security is a topic very close to your heart and a subject of interest. So, how do you see the cyber security skill situation? What's your assessment of the problem there? What are some of those specific areas within cybersecurity where you see these skill gaps prevailing?
I think that that's a field which has seen much more thrust over the last 2 or 3 years now. Definitely over the last 2 years, they have seen much more demand in terms of having a skilled resources in cybersecurity. The reason one, when it was lockdown, there had been the lockdown for both the sides. So moreover, the people moved from work from home. There were a lot of open vulnerabilities. They had to compromise a lot of security postures which they had in terms of. So definitely that gave an opportunity for the other side also as an open playground to come and given a big attack surface on a simple language. So that's how the requirement of the skilled resources at all the verticals on the information securities has grown up. Whether it could be from technology security, whether it could be from the SOC, whether it could be from the SOAR, whether it could be from governance point of view, audit point of view. So all perspective, whether it's application security. So definitely there had been a lot of shortage of the resources. But good part is that over the last 4 or 5 years, I think the number of technologies and solutions which has come up on in terms of information security piece, that has made much more easier and less dependency in terms of the resources. The automation has played a vital role, because there were a lot of things which were automatically being detected and tried preventing to some levels, which has helped not having that much of dependencies on in terms of resources. Simple example, antivirus have moved from signature based to signature less. That has removed a dependency of having someone manually go and ensure that every day the signatures are being updated. But given that all those tools, you need people to run the tool also. So the skill set shortage was there, but they have got a good opportunities in terms of growing it up more. There were dedicated courses which has been offered by the institutions now in terms of engineering or in terms of masters in cybersecurity. So that is giving more skilled resources to the industries in terms of the opportunities. And I think shortage will still be there, because other side you have to win one, this side you have to fail once. So attackers only have to win once, you have to fail only once. So that's that perpetuations in terms of having things. So you need to have force, they only need to one to make you fail.
Right, right. So, like you admitted, Shiju, that there is a shortage of skill sets in the cyber security area also, and the attack surfaces also become very wide during these times in the new normal. So, what kind of an impact is the skill gap in this area having on your organization? Is it spreading the employees too thin? Is it bringing them under extended and excessive stress for a long time? How is it impacting the employees, the resource pool that you have in this area?
So today, having information securities team in terms of dedicated teams or full time is a bigger challenge. So most of the organizations, what we try to do in terms of having blend of services, wherein we try to get in some sort of managed services, wherein you keep putting or keep giving the food for thoughts for multiple customers. So that's the best way to manage the information security piece. That's the one trend which I have been seeing over the last couple of years now. The reason is why, because being a captive, you can only give a particular exposure to any of the techie guys. Now, being having a multiple customers, they may get multiple exposures out over there. So it becomes much more easier for them to retain a resource rather than retaining from a captive side. So it's a blend of the resourcing factors, what we also try to do in terms of managed services as well as in source. So that's how we are also able to manage. And I think that's the best practices which organizations, every organizations and every BFSI organizations are managing today. So it's a blend of managed services as well as in-source resources.
Right. So you spoke about managed services and how it can go a long way in sort of bridging the skill gap that you have internally. But on the internal side, do you think organizations should look for something like a cyber security internship or a graduate trainee program, some a sort of mechanism where they can get people from where they can get freshers from the campuses and offer them an internship and then recruit them if they're good? Do you think something like that would help uh, create a bigger talent pool and help you get market ready resources really fast?
This is the trend since last around 2 to 3 years now, since most of the educational institutions have come up with the dedicated courses for the cyber security. So there are the courses for engineering, there are the courses for BSc cyber security, there are the courses for masters also. Now that's giving a better opportunity for the industries also to pick it up from there, because it's a millennials who comes out from there, and with the latest thought process, with the fresh thoughts which they come out of with a disruptive mindset, it gives much more wider space for the organization also to hire them and train them as per the business requirements and make them ready for the next stage. So this trend is, we are seeing it from last 2 to 3 years now, and that's very much getting adopted within the industry.
Mhm. Okay. What are some of the ways in which you think the industry collaboration can play a role in dealing with this challenge around, skill set shortage? How can it go a long way in creating better opportunities for upskilling? Also, if you could talk about how organizations can better collaborate with the academia to plug some of these gaps. So both industry collaboration and academia collaboration.
This is very valid point actually, which we see missing much more in the industry today, because today industries are more in terms of business competitive, so they doesn't want to share much knowledge. Ideally, from the business perspective I can agree, yes, but from technology perspective it's not an IP. Unless it's not an IP, I'm sure we should have a fraternity where we should go and share our knowledge, what we have done good, so that more and more the skills can be developed around it. at different places. So you are also not in shortage of that particular skills. Today, what happens? We try restricting ourselves to a level of use case by showcasing that, hey, we are the number one to do this in the industry. That's fine. You have done it, but probably now it's your social responsibility also to bring in more skills around it for that technology and others to adopt it. And that's how you grow and others to also let the organizations to grow. And I think that's missing part which is there. Similarly, we should also have it with the academia, so that the new gen or millennials who comes out of the colleges, they should also know what's happening around in the industry, because today what they study in college is totally different from what when they come out of the practical. Because
Right. And there's a lot of unlearning and relearning that needs to be done once they come on
so you
board.
have to, yeah, absolutely true. So they have to learn and unlearn, and in between that, they get confused also, because what they have would have studied, the basic will be remains the same, though, but there will be a lot of new changes which they are seeing in terms of when they walk into the corporate. So definitely it helps to them if they also been given some sort of exposure at that period of time when they are in educational institutions about how the industry is moving towards, so they can equipped well before they are launched in the market. So I think there has to be a common fraternity we should where we should share the knowledge. So today we only do the case studies, and we bring in some sort of benchmarking for us by saying ki, hey, we were the number one to do this, or we were the first in the industry to adopt these sort of technologies. But how do we make it more leverage in terms of other to adopt, and how do we bring in more common resource pool? How do we leverage on each other's resource pool in terms of making sure that the business problems are being resolved for each other? So that is missing now, and that's because of the mainly competitive nature of the business, nature of the confidentialities. So those are the things which always come in picture. But I think we should figure it out, some sort of common fraternities.
Right, that's very interesting. Now, Shiju, there's one thing I wanted to know from you because during the pandemic, the HR and IT worked very closely to facilitate a stay-at-home workforce with all the required tools and platforms to enable them and empower them to do their work. How can they take this newfound association to the next level to help minimize the skill gap and also improve the talent augmentation for the company?
I think during the pandemic, for me, I would have never interacted with the HR in past that much. Have I have interacted during the pandemic? So not a single day when HR used to connect back to us by asking how the people are trying to do, how they are able to connect. So it was more in terms of personal connects which we wanted to build in out over there. The challenge, twofold challenges were there. One, the employees were remote. They never had work in such a scenarios where they had to work completely in isolations, alone out over there, though they were connected through online and the phones and the voice. But what's happening within the organizations, where we are heading towards, how the business is moving towards, so those sort of connect which was missing with the employees, and that's what we were making sure that there's a connect between them, to keep them motivated, keep them embraced about what's the business is doing, where we are heading towards, how the people in the other people in the functions are doing. So those are channels which we created, and that's how the two function came very closer in terms of working towards the employee retentions, employee upskillings. How do we bring in more?
Organizational cohesiveness, building that
Absolutely,
sort of a thing.
absolutely true. So how do we bring in more collaborations? And that collaboration helped a lot in terms of knowing people whom they would have never met when they were in office, because that's how the upskilling started happening. Because when say one function started interacting with other functions, that knowledge transfers, what they do, what they are doing, what next projects what they are working on to, or what sort of innovations they are working on to, and that's helped in terms of bringing a lot of new innovation and thought process and ideas. And definitely that collaboration helped in terms of building and bonding a big group team as a team. And that resulted in, because during the pandemic, no organization has seen who had worked collaboratively going down. Everyone has seen a business going up only, and this was one of the key reasons, because people tried collaborating. So people complained that we had to work for longer hours, and that's because of the nature of the time, need, demand, and the availability of the resources as well, because they didn't have the opportunity to walk out. So that's why everyone was hooked up continuously on in terms of online meetings and online discussions. But that helped a lot in terms of practically in terms of coming closer to each other, knowing business, knowing the functionalities, and that resulted in terms of their upskills as well.
Correct. Correct. Now, Shiju, one of the fundamental reasons behind skill gap is the fact that technology evolves at a very fast pace, and it's very hard to keep pace with that sort of an evolution. So, upskilling is the best and the most cost-effective way to deal with this challenge, especially in times when hiring has been scaled back. It also helps boost employee engagement, productivity, and also their morale, because they know that they're constantly learning market ready skills. So there is a lot of benefit in this, in creating an upskilling program for organizations. So how should organizations arrive at a cost to benefit analysis for upskilling, when they want to provide a better platform to their employees, and also make sure that they stay ahead of the technology curve?
Think organization will always look upon in terms of the cost benefit from their revenues, what the business is going to make from the power of the technology. But technology guys themselves will have to make them upskill first. So I think the biggest gap what I've seen in today's era for the technologies guys is that we don't read, we only browse. So browsing is meant to be reading, and that's
Hmm.
how the gaps are coming it up. Because unless you bring in a practice of reading, unless you make a practice of, and every time you will have an excuse
Very
that I
surface level knowledge that.
absolutely true. Because then
Hmm.
see, upskilling when we talk about, it's a
Hmm.
knowledge upskilling, and upskilling of the knowledge upskilling can only be happen if you have the ability and capability of reading ahead. And if you are not reading really and you don't understand what you are reading, you will not get upskilled. So you can see and upskill yourself once, but you can't do always. You need to have the fundamentals also, and that we have
Also,
done
the
in our.
fact that you mentioned that people should be hands-on and down in the trenches, doing all sorts of hands-on work. That's another important thing, that you have to have hands-on knowledge.
Exactly. Now, reading is one aspect, and how do you practice about that? So, if you have a curve of learning something new, programmings or new functions or new technologies, you will have to do some sort of hands-on also. Then only you will be able to do it. Otherwise, it will be like swimming. I read swimming, and I will be ready to jump into the swimming pool for swimming. That's how the swimming is being learned now. People are reading and people are seeing the videos, and that's how they are trying to learn the swimming. But actually, you can learn swim? No. So you need to do some hands-on also, and that you will have to find out the time. And definitely you will keep saying the whole your career period that you don't get time, and that will be fact for everyone. But how do you bring it out time and make sure that you get some time to study it, and that how you upskill yourself. Organization, if you have that curve and charm to learn, organizations are ready to invest onto that. Today what happens, organization has to force someone to go and do this course, or some sort of engagement with the institutions, whereas it should be push factors for the organization. It should be not be the pull factors from the organization. So I think that's the way we will be able to upskill our own or team, and someone has to become a mentor in the team, wherein they start doing it and others to follow. So I think that's the one thing which you'll have to bring in a culture, as a culture for reading and learning culture, and making sure that other also get competent about it. Otherwise, someone is learning for self, but others are not learning. That's also not a big good practice. So it's a joint, as a team. I think as a team, you will have to do that. And organizations, I'm sure every organization is ready to invest on in terms of upskilling. But at the end of the day, they only get benefited out of it if their existing employees are upskilling themselves. No one else can do wonders apart from the existing employees in the organization.
That's true. That's absolutely true, because they know the culture, they know the processes, they know how
Yes.
the people their work. So I think it's a win-win for both the employees and the employer as well. That's very interesting. Shiju, thank you so much for making the time to be our guest on today's episode of ETCIO Leaders Live. And you did cover a lot of ground during our conversation. You spoke about the specific areas where there are skill gaps, the need for multi-skilling, how organizations can put a structure and strategy around, reskilling and multi-skilling of their employees. You also spoke about the cost-benefit analysis with a special focus on cybersecurity skill gap. Thank you so much for that insightful and engaging conversation. And it's a very relevant topic because skill shortage is not a one-time dilemma. It's a perennial problem, and it will continue to be so. So organizations and employees really need to look inwards to solve this problem. And thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sneha. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A big thank you to all our viewers for joining us today. I hope you found this conversation interesting and useful. We'll be back next Thursday with yet another engaging episode of ETCIO Leaders Live. Follow us on social media to find out who's our guest for the next week. Until next time, this is Sneha Jha signing off.